whether it's a terrible moment or an exquisite moment, it's a really awesome thing to understand that the energy of the best, what we call the best moment of my life, and the energy of what we call the worst moment of my life, those two forms of energy are coming from me, because there's, like I said, there's not much else going on, just me, and my cushion and my practice. So, and that's a really good moment, when you come to that. Oh, yeah. Are you going to address that one? Here's a nice follow-up question.
Yeah, how do you go through the really intense periods that hurt insanely? Do you have any tips? Because you can't run away. Yeah, that is for sure. I found what was really useful for going through any kind of extreme energy, whether it be excruciating pain or excruciating bliss, was being able to zoom back and watch myself, watch my mind going through that process. And I found early on in the retreat that it's sort of a preliminary teaching to what they call a Mahamudra style meditation, where you sort of split off a little piece of your mind and you call that the watcher state of mind, and then this little piece watches the main mind for a while and observes what's happening. And so I found that particular tool very, very useful, and then I was able to, over time, have very good recollection of that, whatever was happening, and to be able to just watch myself going through these crazy peaks of pain and then these crazy peaks of bliss. And why it is useful, because it almost becomes a separate part of you that you watch the main part of your mind with, then it somehow severs the identification that you have so strongly with your emotions and with your feelings, so that you can look at it a little bit more objectively, and even you can get creative and do things like, you can see yourself running around like having a tantrum or bawling your eyes out or something, and you're just kind of like off in the corner watching, there he goes again, like that. And did it help the last time that you did that? Not really. And does he have anything useful? When is he really going to start practicing? And so it was kind of useful for me like that, and that's how I got through a lot of the peaks and the troughs, or whatever you want to call them. You can't run away. It's absolutely true. Whoever wrote that question, you're absolutely right. It's you versus you in retreat. It really is, and there ain't nowhere to run. And your mind is so powerful. It is so strong, and it is so cunning, and it will develop all kinds of amazing alibis and excuses and ideas, and and then it will get into elaborate presentations about different options. It's true, and you're selling yourself, and then eventually you have to cut through all of that crap. Really, is what it is. It's just fluff, and you have to get down to who you really are, right? And why are you there? See, if you don't have a really, really unbelievable reason to be in retreat, you can't stay. You can't stay. You know, our minds started coming out of retreat. I think it was, what was it? March, April, about April, May of 2013, of last year. Of year three. We had a really strong first quarter. Sounds like a company report. The first quarter of 2013 was strong, and then suddenly we were just like boom.
Yeah.
You know, our minds just left the retreat. I remember Lama Christie talking about that too. It was like, because it's like that. You just you reach a certain point, you peak, and then you're done. Even if you're still in the retreat, well, you're not done, but your mind is already turning from the place that you came from through the main part of it. So, yeah, it's very beautiful. And that one. Did you want to do something on that?
So, yeah, what Roger was saying about the, the highs and the lows, and just having the time, really, it's the time to be able, and the space to be able to just step back and watch what's going on. And then what happens is that you eventually realize that whatever it is that's going on is just it's just an intensity of energy. And so if you have something arising in your mind, or perhaps it is an outward occurrence, okay, that gives you a huge, a swirl of some sort of sensation, right? Like emotion or depression or pain or whatever it is, but very, very intense. After a while, you notice that it's just that. It's just like a swirl of energy. And that energy, whether it's grief or jealousy or desire or anger, rage, it's actually identical. The energy is just the same. It's just a huge amount of swirling energy. And when you have that kind of time and opportunity to experience it like that, you just, like Roger said, you just think, oh, how's that working out for you, Kind of an attitude about what's going on in your mind. How's that working out for you? It's very interesting, because then you get to understand that that's the still point. I really like this thing of the still point. I've been using it a lot in asana. And in pranayama, there's a still point, right? There's a still point at the end of the in, or the end of the exhalation. So that still point, for example, if you use pranayama as an example, in that still point, your mind is also doing the same thing. It's completely still. That's why your breath is also completely still. And so when you can lengthen out that still point, then you have a place where you can sit and watch and inquire as to how it's working out, like how everything other than the still point is working out. Am I making any kind of sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're probably making a lot of sense to each other, but sometimes we wonder whether we are. Are we? So somebody says, what was the hardest thing about your retreat and the most rewarding? It's so interesting. This is like the same question 3 times. Is it the same handwriting? Somebody really wants to know, right? What was the hardest thing about your retreat? Well, I don't know that there was anything hard about it. For example, not talking was the easiest thing about the retreat. People think, oh God, how can you not talk? But that's the easiest thing, is just to stop talking. Actually, it was really hard to start. Not physically, you open we chanted and stuff, so it's not that we lost our voices. But what was hard about starting to talk is that as soon as you start to talk, you develop this ridiculous state of lung. In Sanskrit, it's called vata, deranged vata, right? Just like this state of vata derangement, you can't sleep all night, and you certainly can't meditate, You can't even poo. It's like just from starting to talk a little bit more, right? Than we had for years, So that was very hard. To start to talk was very hard. Stopping talking was very easy. And then it was hard in the sense that when you're in that kind of an environment, and time, it seems like time completely stands still. But that doesn't mean that karma also stands still. Actually, it speeds up. It's just like breakneck. Karma becomes like breakneck speed. Just like that. And so, what you think about, what you have going on in your mind manifests itself very quickly, If not in the outer world or in my partner or something, back in my own mind again, it manifests itself as its perfect little result. So, and it's very fast and it's very vicious, depending on what's in my mind. So that, it's hard until you get to the point where until you get to the still point where you think, oh yeah, how did that work out for you? Until you can get to that place, it's very, very hard. It's very hard. And even when you get to that place, it's still hard because you kind of have to go back to that place frequently in order to always remember that, you have every choice about how it's working out for you in every moment. And so whether things are rewarding or, difficult, are very, very much within your capacity to manage, and very much within our power. And then there's this practice called antarmona, and it's a pretty advanced practice in the yoga lineage, and it's really, they call it's Mahamudra. What we learned is Mahamudra in the Tibetan Buddhist lineage. But Swami Muktibodhananda, who translated and commentated on Hatha Yoga Pradipika, sorry, I just have to call a small commercial break to tell you that actually she's coming to Vancouver in September. The Australian lady who was the direct student of Swami Satyananda. And so she's coming in September to teach us and to do a 1-week retreat. But she we had the good fortune to meet her, and she gave us some teachings also. And she was teaching us about antarmona and how it's that process of meeting this energy where it is. And let's say it's a desire energy, okay? So she was using the example of desire energy. So you want something, right? Whether it's food, or shoes or whatever it is. So you want something. And the practice is that at the beginning, you decide that you can have stuff, but you decide what stuff you're going to have and what stuff you're not, right? So the decision that you make is, whatever comes up in my mind, I want it. You just watch it for a while, check out the energy and the way that you experience the energy of it, and then you think, oh yeah, that would be good to have. I think I'll go for that. And but this other thing, probably, if I really think it through, take a few minutes and really think it through, I don't know, maybe it hurts somebody, or maybe it would hurt me, or, maybe I won't have a cup of coffee or whatever. And then, so you do that with the desire as it arises. Some things you do and some things you don't. And then after a while, the exercise turns into that you simply observe, you just watch it and experience it, and you allow yourself to fully experience it. And you act on none of them. And that can be a process of years, between those practices, right? But the practice of simply observing and experiencing that energy is the still point. That is the still point. So you're using the still point to get to the still point. So essentially then there's, you would have to say theoretically that you would just be left with a still point, right? And that's the most rewarding.
I think there are no more questions here. Oh, God, we only had 4 questions and they were all the same. Do you guys have some more? Like, don't you want to know where we got our food or anything? Or some people want to know where'd you, well, how did you eat?
Hello. There were lots of hard parts. There were lots of hard parts. We took a pretty big hit when we eventually got the news about Diamond Mountain and what had happened down there. We chose to look at that information because we were doing the retreat simultaneously as best we could with our classmates at Diamond Mountain, and we felt like we really were part of that retreat in many ways, and so after very careful consideration we decided to look at that. And because we were so closely connected to our teachers and our fellow students at Diamond Mountain who were in the long retreat, there was such an energy, synergistic energy that we had with them, that we could feel with them, that was a hit, but we had almost like a delayed reaction to it. I remember when we got the information and we went through it, we were both in a period of very intense practice, and for me personally, I remember it just sort of basically bounced right over my head, and I didn't even get to it for about 3 months or something after that. And then when it hit, it was devastating, and it was just terribly, terribly sad for us. So that was a really hard point in the retreat. Another hard point for me was when I was able to truly look at all the things in my life, all the crises, all the meltdowns, all the everything that, what you would call the bad things in somebody's life. I realized that for the most part, I had created those situations, and that I had been really grasping very hard to what I wanted in those situations that had popped up in my past, and for all these sort of major points or meltdowns in a person's life, which we all have. That was very hard for me. I had to sit there and really chew on that and acknowledge that, and then to try to work through it. And I think it's still a process, but that was a hard one for me. What was very rewarding was being able to just to be in that retreat, in that forum, and to sit there and to do a certain practice which we had been given instruction on, and to keep on and on and on and on doing it until something happened. And then for, to, how do you say, like to reap the rewards of that and to taste what it is that they talk about when, oh, if you do this in that practice, such and such, or, blah, 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 blah. And to be able to just have that time and to realize that, oh yeah, these instructions were unbelievable, and what was given to us was incredible, and it works if you do it. That's the caveat, right? And then there's doing it, and then there's really doing it, I mean, how hard do we really try? How hard did I really try? Some days were better than others, for sure. You have to keep coming back to it. You have to keep coming back to it until you get a breakthrough somehow. Somewhere, somehow, with, like Larivon was saying, like whatever practice turns you on the most, whatever gives you the most juice, whatever it looks like for you, you have to go to that place, and then you just have to keep on and on and on chipping away at it. It's very interesting. When we came back from visiting our families from overseas, we got back to our land where we did the retreat, and we very reluctantly decided that we wanted to have a few quite large trees taken down because they've really been stealing a lot of sun, and we love the trees in the forest so much, and so we did this big thing, and eventually we called in some professional people to do that. And this fellow who's a tree fella called Jeff, he's the most incredibly skilled tree faller I think I've ever seen. And what he does is he makes certain cuts in this giant tree, huge trees. And then what he does is he pulls out these little wedges, little plastic wedges, and then he starts just tapping them into at certain strategic points around the tree, you see. It's like tap, 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 tap over here. And then he begins to guide and influence the whole situation with this tree. And then eventually this wedging that they call it, and this tapping, he just brings the whole thing over exactly where he wants it every time. He has not missed. And I think it's very interesting for me, watching this whole tree business and this wedging and tapping and everything became a metaphor for practice. For me, was just getting it. Can you just get a little bit of a wedge? Can you tap in and get a little bit of a wedge and open up and get away from the 99.99999% of the stuff in our lives and who we have been and so forth? And can you open up and get into a different place? Can you get like a 1% shift? Because that's what happens, right? You've got this huge tree, like 120 feet tall, with like a 3-foot trunk on it. And what's happening is down the bottom, he's doing this down the very bottom of the tree, he's tapping in these wedges, and they're moving the tree down the bottom virtually nothing, like a millimeter or two. But that 1 or 2 millimeters that he taps in down here translates up 120 feet of trunk to this huge thing, and then he just completely brings the whole thing down. And for me, that became a metaphor for the retreat, really. It was like, can you get 1% of something different than all of our mundane lives and all of our pain and all of our suffering? Can you wedge in to something that will break through that and bring the whole thing down? Samsara. Can you bring samsara down, right? And wedging, in this instance, in my mind, became the idea of where can you access with your mind and your winds. Can you access crucial points in your body, and can you get a wedge in there? And that is how we practice. And that is what we want to do so that we can make big shifts, right? 1% shift here equals like a massive shift up the top of the tree. And it's the same with practice, I think. If you can get a 1% shift, a true 1%, then you can influence things greatly for the rest of your life and the rest of the outcome of your life and the people around you. So that was rewarding, just having the time to be able to sit there and do that, the luxury to be able to do that, and like Yvonne was saying, like just knowing people worked damn hard to keep us there. They really did. We sort of, thank you so much to everybody. We basically left a sort of a pretty much a real mess for certain people to deal with when we went into the retreat, and they did an incredible job. So that allowed us that time to be able to sit there and do that wedging and that tapping. So those were, and then difficult. That was wrong. I went over the difficult. Question. Does anyone have any any verbal questions or anything as well? Or? Yeah. Do you?
Not yet.
Oh. Okay. What was your daily practice looking like? Well, we got up at, whoops, sorry Christine, I messed it up. Sorry Christine, I think I messed this up. Our practices looked a little different. I'll tell you about mine. Even now, I get up at between 4 and 5. In retreat, I got up at 4. I did my first practice by 6, between 4 and 6. That was the most powerful practice for me, the most powerful time to practice. Always. It was the whole retreat. It was the most powerful time. And then second practice, we started it at 10 in the morning, and it went from 10 till noonish, something like that. 9:30 till 11:30 or 10 till something like that. And then afternoon again from between 4 and 6. And then in this retreat, we rarely did a 4th session. And if we did, we would recite our sadhana or something like that at the end of the day. But we did, in the first year, we do a Vajrayogini practice. So we did that practice in the first year very diligently. And then in the second year, we started to do Hatha Yoga Pradipika practice very intensely. So we did that 3 times a day. And Hatha Yoga Pradipika practice is the 4 practices of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika are asana, and then you do your shatkarma, your purification practices before you start to do pranayama intensely, and then pranayama practice, and then mudra and bandha practices. So the mudra and bandha practices are just designed to move you into a practice of kumbhaka. Kumbhaka practice is what I was talking about earlier. It's the still point. So Hatha Yoga is a very strong practice. It's a very kind of a practice. There's nothing subtle about it. And it's not for everyone, but for me, it's really my favorite practice. It's my practice of choice. So that's what my daily practice looked like. Then what did you experience coming back into the world after retreat in terms of the busyness of life and maintaining your clarity and calm? Does the stillness stay after 3 years? I want to give you this analogy of when I had my son. I think I told some of you this. When I had my son, when he was born,
I'm a person who likes very much to be busy, and I like to do things when I like to do them. And, when it's this time on that day, I like to be doing this particular thing. And that doesn't go so well with babies, right? Hillary?
Well, she's not here because of that.
There you go. There you go. So, and I didn't know. This is my first child. I don't know. And my mother was in Japan and I was in Vancouver, and she wasn't telling me anything because she wasn't there. So I have my baby, and it has nothing to do with what I want to do, and nothing to do with when I want to do it or where I want to do it. Like nothing. So I'm thinking, but what about sleep? Don't I even get to sleep? Because you don't. You don't get to sleep. A few hours you get to sleep, right, Mariska? She's got 3 children, gorgeous children, angel children. So children reflect their parents, right? And so I'm beside myself, with the situation, with the not sleeping and everything. And then my mother comes to visit me, and she starts taking Jordan it was called a snuggly when Jordan was born. I don't know what you guys are calling it now, but it's this thing that you hold the baby in the front, you strap it on. So my mother would put Jordan in the snuggly and walk around the block with him in the middle of the night and stuff like that, after I'd nursed him. And then I was I was just ragged. And I said, Ma, when am I going to be able to sleep? When am I going to be able to do this and that and everything? And she looks at me and she says, you see, the thing is that you're thinking that, this is a normal life and this is what it looks like. And what you have to understand is that this is normal now. This is now normal forever. Got it? This is normal. So it was like that, When we came out of retreat, we felt very disoriented for a while. And we felt disoriented, but out of place. Sort of out of place. Like, what are we doing here, We don't even, fit. And we don't even know how to conduct ourselves or what are we supposed to do or... we call it retreat retards. So, that was very strange and odd. And then we realized that this is it's a state of mind, right? That is not going to go away. I can tell now that it's just the way it is. This is just the way it is. In a certain way, we just feel we'll always feel this way. But at the same time, there is the clarity that we both talked about, which also never goes away. This isn't something that can go away. Yeah. It's not something that can go away. What can go away is the things like the degree of sensitivity that you feel. When we came out of retreat, everything is very intense. We experienced everything as being very intense. Because when you're in that kind of a state of retreat and the food is extremely controlled, and the schedule is extremely controlled, and the amount of, still points you've got in your day from your pranayama practice or whatever, your meditation practice, is also, it's all a matter of scientifically controlled situation, right? And so when you are in those kinds of still points for that length of time, and then suddenly you go into an environment where it's not like that, then somehow you've got to be able to translate your retreat experience, yes? And hold what they call hold your mind, and you've got to be able to hold your mind. And it's much easier to do that. It ups your capacity to be able to do that. But the sensitivity of seeing the world the way that it is, and seeing people and the pain that we might see, and the intensity of the bliss that we see too, it's not that it pales, but it kind of like has to lose that intensity in order for you to function in the world, because otherwise you just like anyway, it's very difficult to explain, but you do have to back off of that way of seeing things, even though you would never stop seeing things that way. You know, it's kind of like you have to be able to eat non-organic food. We got to the point, it's a bit ridiculous actually. You know, the food is all organic and completely pure, and there's nothing in a package, and everything we eat, we've made it, or it's fallen off the tree, or, you know what I mean? And it's so controlled, and there's no sugar, and so then when we had some, it was like, it was back to that situation. You're up all night, can't poo, you can't sleep, you know, and it's silly because you can't live like that in the outside world, you see? So you have to back off that kind of sensitivity. This is what I'm trying to say. You have to just like remove yourself from that. You have to be able to deal with the fact that you can't run around with that degree of sensitivity in the world, where, you know, you barf if you have gum or something, you know. No, really, I'm actually not kidding.
That happened.
You do get to that point. Your body becomes so unused to aspartame, for example, you know. Does the happy place, does the stillness stay after 3 years? You mean, can you go back to your happy place just like that? Yes, you can. But you don't have to go to retreat to do that. You know what you have to do to be able to know how to access that place any moment, any time? You have to find the practice that works for you, and then you just do it. And then you just make a resolution. You just make a resolution. Nothing is going to come between me and this thing. And then you can do it in 10 minutes a day, you see? Like Lydia's student. It's a resolution. And that goes back to what Roger was saying about you better have a damn good reason to be in retreat, because you ain't staying if you don't. You know, you pop out. You pop out, and that happens throughout the retreat. But, you know, eventually you do pop out, right? And, you know, when he talks about we were done, you know, we were just done. Yeah, it's like that. It's like if you have a good, what we call a good apostat, which is where, you know, if you are a person who knows when they're full and can stop eating at that point, or you're a person who your eyes open in the morning and you know that you're done. You don't have to look at the clock. You've slept enough. You know that you're done, right? It's like that. And so you do have to practice till you have arrived at that point that you know, and then at that point, you know, you might not have to sit 3 sessions of 2 hours a day, you know, depending on who you are and stuff like that. But then you start liking practicing 3 hours